When I saw the release of this watch, it made me grin from ear to ear. Now, I am not a child of the 70s, or the 80s for that matter, close to the late 80s, but not close enough. But seeing this watch gave me the feeling of the 70s. It struck a chord in me that I hope to explain when looking at it purely from a design point of view. Do any of you remember the H. Moser Swiss Icons watch that was released a few years ago? It was a topic of hot debate at Baselworld, and I might be wrong, but I do not believe that it was ever unveiled because it was considered too offensive for many of the brands being represented at the show. This is what the Q Timex first reminded me of, but with a difference. This watch is infinitely cooler, because to me it captures the fundamentals of the 70s watch design language perfectly. What happened in the 70s? Well, as we know, the watch industry was in complete chaos thanks to the Quartz crisis. Companies were disappearing and many were struggling to stay afloat. So Timex decided to buckle down and go with the flow, creating their first ever quartz watch, the Q Timex. Now immediately, you look at the format of the Pepsi bezel and the dial and say they are just ripping off the Rolex Pepsi GMT, which at that time would have been a reference 1675. Well, yes, they were, simply because the Pepsi GMT was probably one of the most iconic watches at the time. The watch was seen in numerous movies during the 70s, and the color was very distinct and eye-catching. Also, they were desperate for sales. Notice how the case does not have lugs, but instead an integrated bracelet. Where else have we seen this before? Another enigmatic component that ties this piece to watch design of the 70s. And to bring it home, a simple woven mesh bracelet, akin to well-known names at the time like Tersuflex, that could be adjusted on the fly with a simple clip and latch clasp. It has a bright red seconds hand that matches the bezel. And on that note, why did a dive watch choose a GMT bezel and not a dive bezel? Just because. And let's not forget the innovative battery hatch at the back that could be removed without the need of tools, but rather a coin. So now we get to the launch and how this watch premiered for a few minutes before it was sold out. None of us had the chance to grab one unless we were extremely lucky. And now they're selling on eBay for $300 or more. Everyone is buying these pieces with the impression that they will be collector's items. And frankly, if I didn't believe that this watch would be available to buy again in the future, I wouldn't be making this video. So don't fret. Timex have not specified that this watch is a limited edition, and will be restocking these in the near future. The Q Timex is cool. Very cool. Like how the Casio calculator watch became a symbol of the 80s, this piece to me has the audacity and the flair to stand out as a watch of the 70s. And viewing it today, I think it is cooler than the modern Pepsi GMT. Note, I did not say better than or greater than, but cooler than the modern GMT Pepsi. Why do I say this? Well, for one, it was a watch made to be attainable for anyone. It is relatively small, so it could fit anyone. It is compact in the way it is designed, and so it does not look ostentatious on the wrist. And it was a watch made for the working man, not a banker or a tycoon, just an average Joe. So really this piece has a status all to itself. And where the modern Pepsi GMT comes with a larger case, ceramic bezel, and all the modern accoutrements, this piece is a photograph of the 70s, captured and reproduced, bearing all the same design motifs and components from the time. I want you to look at this watch as something fun. Obviously, we are not meant to take it seriously, and if a watch like this offends you, then you should try to see past the stigma that watches like these receive. No other brand, including a watch like this, is hurting Rolex sales, so why should it matter in the end? As a designer, I find this piece to be such a cool juxtaposition. And the fact that it was brought out again, now 40 years later, we as a community are so much more accepting to receive a watch like this. One day, if we all own this piece ourselves, or ever see someone wearing this watch in the wild, I would hope that we all would be compelled to nod and say, "That's cool," because I sure will.